The chamber of Station Zero gleamed in the artificial light, a monument to the Galactic Council's power. Its walls, made of crystalline material, stretched high into the vastness of space, glowing with an iridescent shimmer. These walls, perfect in their design, reflected the dazzling light that filled the air, casting sparkling reflections across the room. The space seemed to pulse with energy, as if the building itself was alive, a living entity housing the fate of countless species. The flags of 312 species rippled proudly in the controlled air currents, their bioluminescent markings glowing with soft pulses, sending waves of light through the chamber. It was a display of unity, power, and history, each flag representing a species, each one contributing its unique voice to the galaxy's most powerful governing body. At the heart of the chamber, Marina Blackwood, humanity's ambassador, stood tall. Her white diplomatic uniform shone against the complex hues of the chamber. It was a simple design, a symbol of humanity's intent to offer peace, a stark contrast to the more ornate garments of the other representatives. Her calm, composed demeanor radiated confidence, yet her eyes betrayed a subtle tension, as if she were preparing herself for the storm ahead. Her voice echoed through the vast hall, steady and clear as she spoke to the assembled council. Humanity's request to expand our colonization rights into the Orion Spur is not only reasonable, but essential for the future of our species, she began. We have adhered to all Galactic Council regulations, ensuring that environmental impact studies have been thoroughly conducted, and we have devised measures to minimize disruption to existing ecosystems. This expansion will foster peace, stability, and mutual prosperity. Her words were carefully chosen, spoken with the precise authority that only someone who knew the stakes could muster. The silence in the chamber stretched as the delegates listened attentively, their eyes on the human ambassador. But that silence was soon shattered by the voice of Supreme Counselor Verth, rising from his seat with the deliberate slowness of a predator. Verth was an imposing figure, towering over most, his 6 eye stalks shifting ever so slightly as he scrutinized Marina. His translucent skin shimmered with faint bioluminescence, casting an eerie glow around him. As the most influential figure in the council, his mere presence demanded attention. His voice, when it came, was sharp, laced with contempt. "Impact studies, Ambassador?" he scoffed. "The same kind that led to the destruction of your planet's ecosystems? The same kind that cost your species countless lives? Tell me, why should we permit you to expand your borders when you have shown so little regard for your own world's well-being?" The sting of his words landed heavily in the room, and Marina's jaw tightened slightly, betraying a momentary flicker of anger. But she was quick to suppress it, her expression remaining composed. Beneath the calm, however, there was a simmering determination that could not be hidden. "Our past mistakes," Marina replied, her voice unwavering, "are the very reason we have gone to such lengths to prevent them from happening again. We've learned. We've adapted. We've evolved, Supreme Counselor. Humanity is not what it was a century ago. We have changed, and we now seek to contribute to the galactic order, not disrupt it." For a moment, the entire chamber was still. The other delegates exchanged glances, some skeptical, others indifferent. But Verth, unmoved by her calm response, raised his hand, a signal to initiate the next phase of the discussion. He activated the security fields around the chamber, a system designed to contain any violent delegate. The air shifted with an ominous hum, the soft blue glow of the force fields flaring to life. The system, meant to merely restrain, suddenly flickered with a more dangerous intent. Marina looked around in confusion, then back to Verth, her face unreadable. But then, the first surge of plasma shot forward, enveloping Marina in a blinding, fiery burst. The chamber was thrown into chaos as the council members either recoiled in shock or in some cases, cheered. Marina, however, stood tall. There was no scream, no cry for mercy. Only the steady look of defiance in her eyes as the plasma intensified, turning from containment to execution. The heat and light distorted her image for a moment, but even then her gaze never left Verth. "You have no idea what you've just started," were her final words, a whisper against the roar of the plasma field. And then, as the field collapsed, only ash remained where she had stood. Her body, her life, was gone. The chamber was silent for a long moment. As the smoke cleared, the delegates looked on in shock, horror, and some, to their surprise, admiration. Ambassador Krar of the Vidian Collective observed the scene with a heavy heart. His species had always believed in maintaining neutrality, but the brutal execution of Marina Blackwood left a bitter taste in his mouth. Humans, he thought grimly, are capable of extraordinary dignity, even in their final moments. The human delegation, 2 junior diplomats and a cultural attaché, was detained immediately, though they offered no resistance. They activated their emergency beacons and simply waited, as if they had known this was coming. Krar's instincts, honed by years of diplomacy, told him that this was not the end. And he was right. Within an hour, every human ship in Council space vanished. They didn't leave through jump gates, nor did they use any known means of propulsion. They simply disappeared, as if they had never existed at all. No trace, no warning. The Council was left stunned, grasping at straws, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Hours passed in an eerie silence. The Council chamber remained open for emergency discussions, though many species were already beginning to question their decisions. The Proxima Syndicate, known for its military might and sharp political sense, was the first to speak. "What have we done?" whispered Ambassador Toera, their 3 hearts pulsing in distress. His voice trembled slightly, despite his best efforts to maintain composure. "What exactly have we done?" The Council continued to argue over proper responses, containment strategies, and media management, foolish concerns in the face of what was coming. There was a feeling that, somehow, everything they had built was about to collapse. High Chancellor Psel of the Valorians declared confidently, "Humanity will need time to process this tragedy, to realize their place in the Galactic Order." But Krar knew better. He had studied humanity, understood their past, and he feared what would come next. The countdown had begun. 24 hours, no more. He knew what that meant, and his heart sank with the weight of what was to come. As the council debated, Krar found himself unable to sit still. He excused himself from the chamber, his hands shaking as he left. He had seen this before. Humanity's ability to unite in the face of external threats, their capacity for survival against the odds. It had been buried in their history, forgotten by many, but Krar understood what it truly meant. He had seen the legacy of humanity's resilience, and now, as the clock ticked, he could feel it coming, something far darker than they had anticipated. Supreme Counselor Verth's eye stalks flickered with cold calculation as his hand moved toward the control panel in front of him. The room, filled with the hum of quiet conversations, grew still in anticipation. His fingers hovered over a sleek, metallic button, the symbol of his authority. Verth's eyes never left Marina Blackwood, standing firm in front of the council. The air around him crackled with silent malice, and his lips curled into a faint, condescending smile as he activated the security field. The chamber's atmosphere shifted instantly. The once controlled air grew thick, heavy with the impending danger. The security fields, designed to restrain only the most aggressive of delegates, glowed a menacing blue as they expanded, but Verth's hand pressed the button, and the fields transformed. They weren't simply for containment anymore. They were weapons. A low hum filled the room as plasma beams began to surge through the newly activated fields, crackling with the energy of a storm about to break. They started as flashes of light, flickering at the edges of the field like distant lightning, but they grew stronger, brighter, until the entire room seemed to hum with power. In the center of the chamber stood Marina Blackwood, unmoving. Her posture was perfect, her dark skin stark against the white diplomatic uniform, a symbol of humanity's peaceful intentions in the galaxy. She didn't flinch. She didn't step back. Her gaze locked with Verth's, unwavering, defiant. As the plasma beams converged upon her, the air around her crackled with heat. But she held her ground, facing Verth with quiet determination. The first wave of plasma hit her like a thunderbolt, and the room exploded in light. The air distorted, the temperature rising sharply. But through the violent blaze, Marina remained visible. Her uniform began to singe, the light blurring her form, but her eyes, filled with purpose, never wavered. And then, as the beams intensified, she spoke. Her voice steady, defiant, and unwavering in the face of the storm. "You have no idea what you've just started." It was not a cry of pain or fear, but a statement of unshakable resolve, the words echoing through the chaos. The plasma surged around her, but she stood tall, unbroken. Her final words pierced the silence, carrying a weight that seemed to hang in the air long after they were spoken. And then, in an instant, the plasma field collapsed. The flames and searing light vanished as quickly as they had arrived, leaving only ashes where Marina Blackwood had stood. The room fell into stunned silence. The shock of the moment hit like a wave. Some delegates were frozen, unable to move, their eyes wide in disbelief. A few from the Proxima Syndicate stood up, their hearts racing, but not in victory. There was a deep unease spreading through them now, but not all were shocked. Some delegates, Valorian and others, exchanged quiet smiles, their alien expressions a mix of superiority and approval. They had not just controlled the situation. They had put humanity in its place. For a moment, the chaos was palpable. Ambassador Krar of the Vidian Collective stood frozen in his seat. He had witnessed countless diplomatic failures, countless acts of cruelty. But this was different. Marina's final act of defiance wasn't just a death. It was the spark of something far larger, something none of them had expected. As the chamber erupted into whispers and shouts, Krar felt an unease settle deep in his stomach. Humanity had always been underestimated, by the Council, by the galaxy. But this was the beginning of something more, something they couldn't control. The reactions from the Council were a blur. Some delegates looked at each other, trying to make sense of the horror they had just witnessed. Some cheered, others simply watched in stunned silence. But all of them were changed. They knew that what had happened today couldn't be undone. Verth stood there, his gaze still locked on the space where Marina had been, his face betraying nothing. His expression was calm, yet there was a subtle flicker of doubt that danced behind his eyes. The rest of the room was in disarray, but he was unmoved. He had made his point, or so he thought. But the true cost of his decision, the real consequences of this brutal execution, were only just beginning to unfold. As the chamber fell into a tense silence after Marina Blackwood's execution, a deep sense of unease settled over the room. Ambassador Krar, his voice tight with regret, began to recount the moment he realized the magnitude of humanity's capacity, the weight of the decision. The choice to push them beyond the point of no return sank heavily within him. His tone faltered as he spoke to himself, the haunting truth finally clear in his mind. "We should have known better. We all should have," he muttered, his eyes distant as he recalled the chilling events that followed. He knew humanity's history. He had studied it in detail, recognizing their unpredictable resilience, their ability to survive the worst of tragedies. But nothing had prepared him for the horror of what came next. As the death of their ambassador echoed across the council space, humanity had no reason to hold back anymore. And now, it was too late to stop what they were about to unleash. It started with a subtle, almost imperceptible shift. The screen in the council chamber blinked with the eerie message, 24 hours remaining. The countdown had begun, a simple clock ticking down, the minutes slipping away one by one. The delegates in the room exchanged glances, but none of them could understand what was about to unfold. To them, humanity was nothing more than an emotional, impulsive species. They believed that after the shocking loss, the humans would retreat into despair or confusion, allowing the council to maintain its dominance. But Ambassador Krar knew better. He had studied humanity far more than any of the others. As the countdown continued, the tension grew thicker. It was the 18-hour mark when the first signs of something strange occurred. The communications, so steady, so constant, suddenly began to fail. At first, the council dismissed it, thinking it was a glitch in their intergalactic system. But then, the anomalies grew. Messages from distant stations fell silent, and entire communication channels went dark without any explanation. Whispers started to spread throughout the room. Delegates from various species, once so sure of their power, now exchanged nervous glances. No one knew why, but it felt as though a force beyond their comprehension was at work. As the hours ticked down, panic began to settle deep in their bones, though they refused to voice it. To them, it was an inconvenience, a mistake. But Ambassador Krar knew this was no mistake. Humanity was sending a message, one that no one could yet understand. And then it happened. The first human ship in the council space simply vanished. It wasn't destroyed. No explosion, no crash. It simply disappeared, as though it had never existed. The air in the room froze. The council members stared at the empty space, trying to process what they had just seen. Another ship vanished, and then another. Within minutes, all human ships were gone. They hadn't left through jump gates. They hadn't used any conventional means of travel. They had simply ceased to exist, like shadows fading from the edges of a dream. Chaos erupted in the council chamber as the delegates scrambled for answers. The Zorathians hissed in alarm, their bodies twitching with fear, while the Proxima Syndicate's representatives shot frantic messages to their home systems. But all they found was more silence. Nothing. No trace of humanity remained. Ambassador Krar stood in stunned disbelief, his heart pounding. He had expected some kind of retaliation, but this complete and utter disappearance was beyond anything he had imagined. The tension in the chamber grew unbearable as more ships went dark, one after another. The Arxan Empire, always ready for battle, ordered their fleets to prepare for an immediate defense, but their sensors found nothing. Not a single human ship remained. The galaxy, for the first time, was completely silent where humanity once was. The countdown continued. 12 hours remaining. flashed across the screen. The council members could hardly focus on the clock anymore, as the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Desperation crept into their voices as they called for answers, but no one had any. Krar, his face pale, watched the chaos unfold around him. The anomalies were growing more apparent, the mysterious disappearance of humanity's fleet spreading like an unseen tide that could not be stopped. Humanity's message had been clear, though not yet fully understood by the Council. They were no longer the weak, untested species they had once been. They were a force capable of disappearing without a trace, without explanation, leaving nothing but silence in their wake. The Council had killed one of their own, but humanity had just erased their very existence from the stars. The room grew heavy, the air suffocating with unspoken fear. The delegates who had once mocked humanity, who had once assumed they were an emotional, impulsive species, now realized the truth too late. Humanity was far more than they could ever comprehend. Ambassador Krar stood frozen, knowing the worst was yet to come. Humanity had no reason to hold back anymore. And in the next 12 hours, the Council would learn just how far they were willing to go. As the clock ticked relentlessly down, Krar could feel the weight of what he had witnessed. He wasn't sure how it would all unfold, but one thing was certain. Humanity had just taken its first step toward something far more terrifying than the galaxy had ever imagined. The vastness of space seemed almost insignificant as the Arxan Empire's fleet moved into formation. 5,000 ships, sleek and formidable, glided through the void with an intimidating, flawless precision. These ships were a sight to behold, massive, dark, and angular, their hulls blackened with the scars of countless battles. Each vessel seemed to shimmer with a deadly light, an aura of power that filled the room with unease. They were the pride of the Arxan Empire, one of the galaxy's most feared military forces. And as they approached the heart of Council space, their presence sent a clear message. Humanity would be taught a lesson. In the Council chamber, the atmosphere was heavy with anticipation. The delegates stared at the screen, their eyes narrowing as the Arxan fleet neared. The ships were arrayed in an intimidating spearhead formation, their engines glowing ominously, each one radiating an unspoken promise of destruction. To the Council, the message was clear. The Arxan Empire was here to assert its dominance and show humanity just how insignificant they were in the grand scheme of galactic politics. As the fleet advanced, Ambassador Krar couldn't help but feel a sinking sensation in his chest. He knew the Arxans well. Brutal, efficient, and unstoppable. This was more than a mere show of strength. It was a warning to humanity. The Council had believed they were in control, but now the galaxy's most powerful military was making its move. Still, there was a part of Krar that wondered if humanity truly understood what they had provoked. Then, at the 22nd hour, as the Arxan fleet approached its target, the unexpected happened. One ship, then another, and another. The entire fleet began to vanish. At first it was subtle, a single vessel disappearing from the screen without explanation. Then it happened again, and again. With each passing moment, the fleet, once a symbol of absolute power, began to dissolve into the void, leaving only empty space where it had been. Panic swept through the Council chamber as the reality of what was happening began to set in. The Arxan ships were vanishing, one by one, without a single explosion, without a trace. No debris, no signs of conflict, nothing. Just empty space. The massive armada, 5,000 strong, gone in a blink of an eye. The delegates were stunned. Eyes wide, mouths agape. They stared at the screens in disbelief. Some tried to make sense of it, sending frantic messages to the Arxon command, but there was nothing. No response, no signal, only silence. A few delegates, especially those from the more militaristic factions, began to stir, their hands reaching for their weapons or their communication devices. The Arxon fleet, their first line of defense, was now completely erased. The council members exchanged nervous glances, their faces paling as they began to understand the true meaning of what was happening. The panic in the room was palpable. Some delegates were too stunned to move, while others rushed to their terminals, desperately trying to reach the Arxons. Nothing. The ships had simply ceased to exist. It was as though they had been erased from existence itself. Ambassador Krar stood frozen, staring at the empty space where the fleet had once been. He had known humanity was resourceful, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The Arxons, the galaxy's greatest military force, had been wiped out in an instant, without a single shot fired in retaliation. And the Council? They had been watching, powerless, as humanity's response unfolded before them. It wasn't just the disappearance of the fleet that chilled Krar to the bone. It was the fact that humanity had done this. They hadn't fought back in the traditional way. They hadn't attacked with weapons or ships. Instead, they had simply erased their enemies. And now, the Council could do nothing but watch in horror. As the hours continued to tick down, the room was filled with murmurs and hushed voices. Confusion spread like wildfire. Some delegates were still trying to grasp the full scope of what had just occurred, while others began to voice their panic. The Zorathians, once the epitome of calm, were now visibly agitated, their bodies tense with fear. Even the Proxima Syndicate's representatives, normally so confident and calculated, were visibly shaken. But Ambassador Krar knew. This wasn't just a message from humanity. This was something far more powerful. They had proven a point, one that the Council couldn't ignore. The Arxon fleet, the pride of a species that had once controlled the galaxy's military might, was now nothing, a memory lost in the folds of time. The camera lingers on Krar as he slowly turns away from the screen, his eyes filled with dread. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was no longer the powerless species they had once been. They were a force, one that could disappear fleets, one that could erase the very presence of their enemies without a single shot fired. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the council room grew tense, the hum of uncertainty hung heavy in the air. The delegates, still reeling from the mysterious disappearance of the Arxon fleet, could only sit in confusion, their minds struggling to process what had just occurred. The clock on the screen counted down relentlessly. 1 hour remaining. The council had no answers, only questions. They had underestimated humanity, but now, as the final moments of the countdown approached, they were about to witness something far more terrifying than anything they could have imagined. Then, at hour 23, the screens across the council chamber flickered to life once again. This time, it wasn't just a routine broadcast or a diplomatic update. It was something far more deliberate. The screen was filled with images of humanity's history, flickering rapidly, showing scenes of destruction, struggle, and perseverance. It began with wars, with humanity fighting against itself, against other forces, against nature itself. Explosions, famine, chaos, and death. It was a visual testimony of humanity's worst, a stark reminder of how far they had fallen, how close they had come to extinction. The camera lingered on images of war-ravaged cities, crumbling landscapes, and the scars of disasters that had torn their world apart. But as the scenes unfolded, there was something unmistakable in the air. Among the chaos, humanity's survival became apparent. The images shifted from tragedy to triumph, humanity rising from the ashes of its past mistakes. There were scenes of rebuilding, of technology flourishing, of unity in the face of unspeakable challenges. It was a record of resilience, humanity's ability to endure, to adapt, and to rise stronger after every setback. Through the video, the galaxy saw a species that had been driven to the brink of extinction more than once, yet somehow, always found a way to survive. The camera slowed, focusing on those final moments of hope. Humanity's triumphs over disaster, their growth in the face of unimaginable odds, and most importantly, their inexhaustible will to survive. And then the message appeared, stark and final, written in bold letters across the screen. "We have survived worse." The words lingered in the air, an undeniable statement of strength and defiance. The screen went black for a moment, and the council sat in stunned silence. The weight of humanity's history hung over them, and for the first time, they realized the true significance of those words. It wasn't just a statement of survival. It was a warning. As the final moments of the countdown ticked away, the room became heavier, more oppressive. The screen flashed with the numbers. 00 Suits Kso. The council had braced for something, but nothing could have prepared them for what came next. Without any warning, 10,000 unknown human ships appeared in the council space. Their arrival was as sudden as it was spectacular, sleek, predatory, and unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. The ships seemed to shimmer as they emerged from the depths of space, their smooth, dark surfaces reflecting the dim light of distant stars. These weren't the ships humanity had sent before, those crude vessels they used in their early interstellar days. No, these ships were something entirely different. They were built for a purpose, for domination, and their design was far more advanced than anything the Council had ever witnessed. The sheer scale of the fleet was overwhelming. 10,000 ships, forming an imposing presence in the void, cutting through space with a precision and elegance that spoke of terrifying power. They were not here for diplomacy. They were not here for negotiations. They were here to show the galaxy the full extent of humanity's capabilities. As the ships took position, a transmission was sent directly to Ambassador Krar. His eyes widened as Thomas Chen, humanity's leader, appeared on the screen, his expression calm, his voice steady. But the weight of his words was like a stone dropped into a quiet pond, creating ripples that would shake the very foundation of the Council. Thomas Chen. Calm, chilling. You have witnessed our capacity for forgiveness. Now you will witness the alternative. The message was as clear as it was chilling. Humanity had forgiven the Council's arrogance, had given them the opportunity to reconsider their actions, to reflect on the death of Marina Blackwood. But now, as the final moment arrived, humanity was showing them that forgiveness had its limits. The Council had pushed them too far, and now they would see what humanity was capable of when backed into a corner. The screen cut back to Ambassador Krar, his face pale, eyes wide with realization. The Council had thought they were in control, that they had subdued humanity. But now, they were facing the consequences of their own underestimation. Humanity wasn't just a species fighting for survival. They were a species that had learned how to bend the very fabric of space, how to erase fleets from existence, and how to harness power beyond the Council's understanding. The camera slowly pulled back as the 10,000 ships hovered in formation, their presence a stark reminder of humanity's true strength. The Council could do nothing but watch in terror as the reality of their situation settled in. This was no longer a negotiation. This was war, and humanity had made it clear that they were no longer willing to play by anyone else's rules. At hour 23, the council chamber was filled with a palpable tension, the weight of their actions pressing down on the room. As the last embers of the Arkson fleet's disappearance still lingered in the minds of the delegates, the hum of the chamber was broken by the appearance of a new transmission. The screen flickered to life, casting a cold, mechanical glow across the room. Humanity's ships were in full view, 10,000 strong, sleek, and deadly. The ships hovered over the council's space like a gathering storm, their dark, smooth hulls reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Each vessel gleamed with a sense of purpose, their engines humming softly, waiting for the order to strike. The atmosphere in the council chamber shifted from disbelief to absolute tension. The council had witnessed the disappearance of the Arkson fleet, but now, this. The silence stretched long as humanity's fleet remained eerily still, their presence undeniable. The delegates exchanged nervous glances, their unease growing with every passing second. Then, with a sudden surgical precision, the human fleet opened fire. It was not a barrage of indiscriminate destruction, but a cold, calculated series of strikes. The beams cut through the space, not annihilating the council's station, but instead targeting the leadership, those who had signed off on Marina Blackwood's execution. The camera followed the shots as they hit their mark one by one, each blast carefully aimed, not to devastate but to remove. The first shot hit with stunning accuracy, leaving a precise hole in the heart of the command center. The council's leaders were the targets, those who had supported the death of the human diplomat. Each leader was struck down with uncanny precision. No more, no less. The council chamber, once a symbol of unity, was now a place of destruction. The camera followed each of the surgical strikes, the beams cutting through the walls, not to destroy the station, but to meticulously excise those responsible for the death of Marina Blackwood. The sound of the blasts echoed throughout the room, filling the space with a chilling reminder of humanity's newfound power. The deliberate, unhurried nature of the attack made it even more terrifying. There was no chaos, no explosion of random violence, just calculated justice, each shot landing exactly where it was needed, each beam surgically removing the council's leaders, one by one. As the shots continued, the council members sat frozen, their faces pale as they realized the full extent of the humanity they had underestimated. The Proxima Syndicate's representatives were already looking around nervously, trying to figure out what to do next. They could feel the heat of the moment. Zorathians, known for their cool, reptilian demeanor, were now visibly shaken, their bodies tense and their eyes darting from side to side, searching for an escape. No one knew what would happen next. The human fleet, calm and unmoving, had just shown them the full weight of their power, and the council was now facing the consequences. The camera pulled back slowly, showing the devastation unfolding. The walls of the council chamber, once proud and pristine, were now scarred. Their once perfect glass now cracked and shattered. But it was not the station itself that had suffered. It was the council's leadership, excised with ruthless precision. The cold, calculated nature of humanity's response was undeniable, and the delegates knew there was no way to undo what had just been done. Fear spread like wildfire. The once united factions began to turn on one another, looking for ways to escape the wrath that humanity had just shown. The Proxima Syndicate was the first to make a move, their representatives backing away from the proceedings, quietly signaling their ships to retreat from the council's station. They were afraid of what humanity might do next. afraid that they too would be targeted for their complicity in the death of Marina Blackwood. The Zarathians followed, their ranks starting to thin as they too withdrew, no longer certain of the safety they once took for granted. Whispers of surrender began to echo through the room, as species that had once stood together under the banner of the Council began to scatter, trying to separate themselves from the fallout of humanity's wrath. In the midst of it all, Ambassador Krar stood silently, watching the unraveling of the Council. His face was pale, his mind racing as he tried to comprehend the full scope of what he had just witnessed. Humanity's retaliation had not been a wild act of rage. It had been precision itself. They had taken what they were owed, and they had done so with chilling efficiency. They hadn't attacked indiscriminately. They had acted with purpose, cutting away the cancer at the heart of the Council. The Council's leadership had been removed with an accuracy that left no room for doubt. This was no longer a matter of diplomacy. It was a matter of survival, and humanity had made it clear that they were now in control. The Council, once a symbol of galactic unity, was now crumbling under the weight of its own fear. The delegates had been so sure of their power, so sure of their superiority, that they had never considered the possibility that humanity would rise up in such a way. Now, they were running scared, looking for any means to protect themselves from the precise wrath of a species that had shown them a side they had never imagined. And all the while, the human fleet remained in place, unmoving, silent, a reminder that this was only the beginning. As humanity's fleet loomed in the vast expanse of space, poised and calculating, it became clear that their power was not just in their weapons, but in their ability to teach, to show the galaxy its place. Humanity did not merely fight. They instructed. They illuminated. As the Council trembled in fear of their military might, humanity launched Operation Righteous Response, a surgical strike not just against their enemies, but against the very structure of the Galactic Council itself. The camera cut to a display of human ships in action, their quantum displacement drives shifting the very fabric of space, allowing them to materialize within enemy formations. Ships blinked in and out of existence, appearing inside the very defenses of their enemies before unleashing devastating, precise strikes. No shields could stop humanity's advanced technology, and the Council fleets found themselves helpless, unable to respond to the unrelenting strikes. The Arxen fleet, so confident in its power just hours before, was now nothing more than a smoldering wreck, stripped of its ability to defend itself against the surgical precision of humanity's forces. Humanity didn't need to destroy everything. They didn't need to annihilate. What they destroyed was the arrogance of those who thought they were untouchable, those who thought they could play with human lives without consequences. The fleets of the Council species, once proud, once so sure of their dominance, found themselves powerless against the simple, terrifying truth. Humanity had evolved into a force that could bend space itself, a force that could materialize and strike with clinical accuracy. And as if to drive home this newfound superiority, humanity didn't stop at the battlefield. They turned the entire galaxy into their stage for a more insidious campaign, one of psychological warfare. Humanity introduced the grievance calculator, a simple yet devastating tactic. Every species, every ally and enemy of the Council was given the opportunity to air their grievances. The species who had suffered under the Council's rule for centuries were suddenly given a platform, a chance to reveal their long-buried secrets and betrayals. Humanity knew exactly what they were doing. They didn't need to destroy their enemies. They needed to make them destroy themselves. The Council, which had once operated with ease and manipulation, now found itself splintering from within. The Proxima Syndicate was the first to speak, revealing how they had secretly manipulated the Council's decisions for their own gain, using the Council as a pawn to secure their own power. Zorathians, the masters of covert strategies, exposed their own covert operations designed to undermine Council mandates in favor of their own military goals. Species that had once been allies now found themselves in a battle for survival, their dirty secrets now laid bare for all to see. The Council's foundation was crumbling, betrayal seeping through every joint and crack, and humanity stood back, observing as their psychological warfare took hold, watching as the species of the Council turned on each other. With every confession, every secret revealed, the Council weakened. Species began to turn on one another, their alliances collapsing as old wounds were reopened, long-held grudges coming to light. The Proxima Syndicate withdrew first, their representatives hastily departing the Council in a desperate attempt to preserve their power. Others followed suit, pulling their fleets back, distancing themselves from the growing chaos. The Council, once so confident in its unity, was now a fractured shell, every alliance breaking apart under the weight of humanity's psychological assault. And as the last fragments of the Council's unity crumbled, Alexandra Blackwood, the daughter of Marina Blackwood, took her stand. She stepped into the broken Council chamber, her presence calm and resolute, a perfect reflection of her mother's strength. The camera lingered on her face as she addressed the Council and the galaxy, delivering the final terms of surrender. "We want peace," she said, her voice unwavering, echoing through the chamber with a quiet authority that only a Blackwood could possess. "Not domination. We want to build a galaxy where we can all coexist, where power is not seized through fear and violence, but through cooperation and understanding. This is our offer. Accept peace or be left behind in the dust of a broken past. We are not here to conquer. We are here to transform." The camera held on Alexandra for a moment, her words hanging in the air like a challenge, a promise, a final call to the Council. Humanity was not interested in revenge or domination. They wanted a future that was not built on the foundation of oppression and corruption that the Council had constructed over millennia. The Council members, now shattered, broken, and terrified, had no choice but to face the reality that humanity had created. They had fought not just with weapons, but with the power of truth, and humanity had shown them that even the mightiest empire could crumble when it had no integrity. The galaxy had been changed forever, and humanity had just made its first step toward creating something new, a future where peace and cooperation could flourish, free from the shadows of a corrupt past. The remnants of the once powerful Galactic Council now found themselves at a crossroads, with the terms set by humanity unfolding before them like a new dawn. The remaining species had no choice but to acknowledge the reality they had so long avoided. The camera panned over the once proud Council chamber, now filled with uneasy representatives from all corners of the galaxy. Species who had once jealously guarded their power were now faced with an offer they could not refuse: the formation of the Galactic Assembly, a new governing body where every species, regardless of how primitive or advanced, would have equal representation. This was no longer about old power structures or who had the most ships or the largest armies. Humanity had changed everything, offering a future where every voice could be heard. Every species could share in the advancement of the galaxy. Humanity, in its quiet strength, had shown the galaxy that true power lay not in domination, but in the ability to build. As the assembly formed, humanity shared its true technologies. Quantum displacement drives that allowed ships to bend the very fabric of space, appearing and disappearing at will, and neural interface systems that bridged the minds of all species, eliminating the barriers of language, fear, and misunderstanding. Species that had once underestimated humanity now understood that these technologies were far more powerful than any weapon. They were the tools to reshape the galaxy itself. The camera showed species that had once scoffed at humanity's technology now in awe. Their leaders signing the new terms, accepting the chance to share in this new, bold future. But amid the newfound unity, one final, poignant moment of surrender was yet to come. Admiral Kex, the proud leader of the Praetorian Guard, known for their rigid discipline and unmatched military might, stood alone, staring into the depths of the chamber. His jaw tightened, his hand gripping his ceremonial sword as his once unshakable resolve faltered. The camera focused on his face, hardened by years of military command but now worn with the weight of a terrible revelation. With a slow breath, he spoke, his voice breaking the silence of the chamber. "My own bodyguard," he confessed, his words trembling, "has been a human agent all along." The room fell still as the realization hit. Kex's trusted protector, the very one who had always been by his side, who had guided him through countless battles, had been loyal to humanity all along. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any external force, shattering the Praetorian Guard's myth of unbreakable loyalty. The truth bombs humanity had launched had shaken the Council to its core, revealing not just the systemic corruption of the Council, but the intimate betrayals between the most trusted of allies. Kex, his armor still gleaming but now heavy with the burden of his actions, knelt before the assembly. He had seen the truth of humanity's offer, and for the first time, he understood the futility of resistance. The Praetorian Guard, once a symbol of the Council's unyielding strength, had fallen, not to humanity's weapons, but to their truth. Kex's surrender marked the end of a long era of military dominance for the Council. The camera held on the Admiral, his pride broken, his face now a mask of solemn acceptance. Humanity had not just defeated the Council in battle, they had undone everything the Council had built, revealing the cracks that had been hidden for millennia. And then, in a moment of quiet triumph, the focus shifted to Alexandra Blackwood, the daughter of the fallen diplomat, Marina Blackwood. Standing tall before the assembly, her face calm yet filled with purpose, she took her place in the heart of the newly formed assembly hall. The camera zoomed in on her as she addressed the room, her voice steady, the weight of her mother's legacy upon her. "We want peace," Alexandra declared, her voice strong and unwavering. "Not domination. Humanity is not here to conquer, but to build a new galaxy, one where every species, no matter how different, can thrive together. This is our offer. A future based on cooperation, not subjugation." The camera cut away from her resolute expression, showing the faces of the Council representatives, now somber, reflective. This was not a galaxy ruled by the strong or the deceitful. It was one built on the foundation of truth, cooperation, and peace. Species that had once been locked in competition now began to see that this was the only path forward. They had a choice: embrace the new order humanity had laid before them, or be left behind in the ashes of their old ways. The camera shifted again, this time zooming in on a statue of Marina Blackwood, standing proudly in the center of the new assembly hall. Her likeness was carved in meticulous detail, her face set with determination and grace, a silent symbol of the sacrifice that had led to this moment. Alexandra stood before the statue, a silent tribute to her mother, her hand resting gently on the base. It was a moment of remembrance, a moment of legacy, for Marina had not died in vain. Her vision of a peaceful galaxy was now becoming a reality. As the camera slowly pulled back, the scene transitioned to children, both human and alien, playing together in the halls of the new assembly. They shared games, laughter, and stories, no longer separated by their differences, but united in their shared future. Human children and alien children exchanged ideas, cultures, and dreams, learning from each other as they laid the foundation for the galaxy to come. The sight was a testament to the new world humanity had helped create, one where cooperation, understanding, and unity were no longer ideals, but tangible realities. The camera lingered on the children, their faces full of promise and curiosity, as the scene faded into the horizon of a new galaxy. One built not on conflict, but on the hope that all species could come together and build a future that was truly united. The camera slowly pulls back, revealing the newly established Galactic Assembly, a place where unity and cooperation now reign. The hall, once cold and imposing, now radiates warmth and promise. Every species, no matter their size or history, has an equal seat at the table. Humanity's leadership does not impose its will, but works to build a peaceful future for all. It is a new order, born not from the ashes of conflict, but from the desire to grow together. The walls of the assembly, once symbols of division, now reflect the spirit of collaboration, as delegates from across the galaxy gather to shape their collective future. There is no more arrogance, no more dominance. Instead, there is an undeniable sense of shared purpose. The Council, once fragmented and corrupt, has been replaced by this new institution, a place where all voices are heard and respected. The camera continues to pull away, shifting to a new scene that underscores the change. Human children, laughing and carefree, play hopscotch in the center of a sprawling park. Beside them, alien children join in, their laughter blending with the joy of the moment. The simple game of hopscotch, once just a childhood pastime, now becomes a symbol of something much more significant. The camera lingers on the children as they play together without fear or hesitation, human and alien, sharing their childhood and their futures. It's a vision of the galaxy Marina Blackwood had hoped for, a vision of a united future where the next generation could grow without the scars of war or division. The children run, their innocent joy a stark contrast to the bitter past their species had left behind. They are the embodiment of the peace that humanity fought for, the promise of a world where differences no longer divide, but unite. The camera shifts again, pulling out to show a vast view of the galaxy, where the once divided planets now orbit together in harmony. The scars of past conflicts are fading, replaced by the quiet hum of progress. Humanity's influence is now deeply rooted in the fabric of the galaxy, not through domination or fear, but through the genuine will to build something lasting, something better. The Galactic Assembly is a beacon of hope, a symbol that the galaxy can finally work together, not just to survive, but to thrive. As the peaceful scene unfolds, a voice rings out in the background. Ambassador Krar's voice, soft, yet filled with a profound understanding. His words reflect the journey that had brought them to this moment. A journey marked by arrogance, fear, and ultimately profound change. We met humanity, underestimated them, feared them, and tried to break them. In return, they taught us how to be better. The camera lingers on Krar's face, now full of reflection. His eyes, once filled with doubt and distrust, now reflect the wisdom earned through loss and realization. He watches the children in the park, the peaceful assembly hall, the new future that humanity had helped create. He understands now. Humanity wasn't here to conquer. They were here to show the galaxy that it could be different, that there was a better way forward. Through their strength, their resilience, and their ability to forgive, humanity had redefined the future of the galaxy. The final shot pulls back once more, showing the entire galactic assembly in motion, the species working side by side, the promise of a peaceful future evident in every exchange, every decision. And as the camera fades, the sounds of children's laughter fill the air, a soft, hopeful symphony of the new era that has begun. The galaxy, once on the brink of collapse, is now on the path to a bright and united future, built by those who had the courage to create it. A future where humanity's greatest gift is not its military might, but its capacity for change, for growth, and for peace.